Welcome back to this episode of the Deep Penetration Podcast. My name is Danny, in case you don't know who I am, and I am a love and self-esteem coach that works with the LGBTQIA plus community. And I work with all things having to do with self-identity and self-confidence, self-esteem, navigating and managing love, cultivating and building healthy and sustainable relationships, and really just kind of unpacking the stereotypes within the queer community. I think it's incredibly important for us to talk about these subjects or these topics that may still be considered taboo, or things that we've come to believe are a necessity in order for us to feel comfortable as gay, bisexual, lesbian, trans people within the community. At the end of the day, expressing yourself as you, is the most important part. There is no wrong way of being queer. So if you feel at any point that you need to conform to a certain way of being in order to fit into the community, that's why this podcast is here, right? That's why I do what I do, because I want to help you to understand and realize that, your individuality is just as important as the next person's. So that being said, every week I have a different topic that I talk about. There are different things that I try to unpack, specifically that have been experienced within the queer community, or my own personal experiences and experiences that my clients have had. And we are talking about toxic relationships today, how to identify it, and what to do, right? Unfortunately, it is not uncommon that I work with clients that are in toxic situations. And over my years as being a self-esteem and love coach, I have seen many faces of toxicity. So let me ask you a question. What do you envision when you think of a toxic relationship? It's not uncommon to envision screaming and yelling and physical abuse and infidelity and many of these other things that are more intense in nature. But the reality is, toxic relationships also consist of micro threats, the threats that are not overly apparent. In fact, they're so subtle that it can be very easily confused for character traits such as stubbornness or impatience or forgetfulness or avoidance. And it's something that I work with my clients one on one. If you feel that you are in a toxic situation, it's important to take note that it's very easy to just kind of throw out like, oh, my relationship is toxic, or my partner is toxic, or, I'm toxic. But we have to really unpack and figure out what character traits, what behaviors you or your partner are exhibiting that is contributing to the relationship being toxic. There are so many times that I work with people, and as individuals, you guys may not be toxic, but the dynamic between the two of you ends up becoming toxic. And we can't negate the fact that in the queer community, for gay men and bisexual men, I'm not excluding women, right? So I'm not excluding lesbians or trans or any of those things, but I'm talking about my own personal experience as a man in the queer community. There's a lot of repression, and there's a lot of insecurities that are kind of masked by overt confidence, or the need to be in control, or perfectionism. And what may seem to be a personality trait, when mixed with another person in a relationship, can turn out to be pretty toxic. And there was this thing that I was reading, right? And it's a guy named Jeffrey Bernstein. And according to Jeffrey Bernstein, in an article that he wrote that was titled, "Is Your Relationship Toxic?" A toxic relationship usually is a relationship in which you feel unfulfilled, emotionally neglected, or even worse yet, you're abused in your intimate relationship. So we have to keep in mind, toxicity isn't always a result of a single person. It can be due to, like I said, the combination of two personality types that are not compatible. And I have seen many cases in which both individuals separately, like I said, are good people. You're good people. but you bring out the worst in each other when you are together. And certain dynamics can be triggers for unhealed traumas or wounds or things that we should always be aware of that we may be contributing to the relationship, but a lot of people aren't aware of those things. A lot of the times it's subconscious things that we have not dealt with. And when we allow it to kind of just sit in the background or to be compartmentalized or be locked away and tucked down deep inside, we find ourselves in these perpetual toxic relationships. And you're probably thinking to yourself, like, dude, why can't I fucking find a healthy relationship? Or why can't I find somebody who's willing to commit? Or why can't I find somebody who understands me? And it's very possible that there are unhealed issues or unresolved issues that are contributing to that dynamic. So allow me to clarify something. In no way am I victim blaming. Okay. There are many situations out there in which one individual is being abused by the other, 100%. But in my experience, we have to look at both sides of the coin, not just one. So if you feel that you are in a toxic relationship, here are the three primary signs I have come to find over the years of coaching and the countless case studies, articles, and research that I've read pertaining to toxic relationships that I think might be helpful for you, right? So number one, it's the lack of trust and respect. So one of the first signs of toxic relationships is a lack of trust or respect. And if your partner is constantly questioning your motives or accusing you of things you didn't do, it is highly likely that they do not trust you. And trust and respect go hand in hand. Therefore, if your partner does not trust you, it is likely that they do not respect you. And I'm going to talk about somebody called John Gottman right now. So John Gottman is actually somebody in the field of psychology that was well known or renowned for his analysis of marriages and couples and the likelihood of that relationship being successful through a series of individual theories that he came up with, right? And according to John Gottman, criticism and contempt, right, which is technically one of the dark horses of the relationship apocalypse, one of the things that he also coined, these go hand in hand with trust, respect, and admiration. And I have worked with clients that are so deep in the cycle of contempt and criticism that it has become second nature to put each other down, right? One partner says a comment, like say, for example, your partner says to you, you don't take care of yourself anymore and you always look like shit. And then you respond with, well, I would take care of myself if I actually had someone at home I was excited to see, right? And things can get really catty and sassy. And that pattern is not toxic, it's destructive. And destructive, it's destructive to your mind, it's destructive to your body as a whole. So if you feel like your partner just doesn't trust or respect you, it's important to have an open and honest conversation about how you feel. And maybe it's vice versa. Maybe you don't trust your partner. And this probably seems like it's fruitless if the dynamic is this bad, at this point. But it's important to let your partner know that their behavior is not acceptable and that you need to be treated with trust and respect in order for the relationship to actually work. So if your partner is unwilling to change or continues to exhibit toxic behavior, it may be time to end the relationship. The second thing here is emotional and verbal abuse. And emotional and verbal abuse can take many forms. It can be as simple as name calling or as complex as manipulation. So if your partner is constantly putting you down or making you feel bad about yourself, I would highly recommend taking a step back and asking yourself some questions, right? And usually when I have a one-on-one coaching session, these are some of the questions that I ask. So usually I'll ask, do you feel, or I will have you ask yourself these questions as reflective questions, right? So I wanted to clarify that. So the first one is, do I feel I deserve to be treated in this way? Do I believe the things my partner is saying? Why am I allowing my partner to treat me in this way? And if we get into the more complex aspects of emotional and verbal abuse, then we have to speak about manipulation and the different ways in which your partner could potentially be manipulating you. If you are unfamiliar with manipulation, basically here is I'm going to give you a short list of some signs, right? So there's guilt tripping, there's gaslighting, there's ultimatums, there's withholding of affection, there is the silent treatment, self victimization, deflection, right? The list can go on and on, but these are just a few. And if you are experiencing emotional or verbal abuse, it's very important that you seek help, that you look for a support network, that you talk to a trusted friend, a family member, a coach like myself, or a therapist, somebody who can really help you to unpack the emotional aspect of these things, and what you are currently going through. You can also reach out to organizations like the National Domestic Violence Hotline or the Gay Men's Domestic Violence Project for support and for resources. And I will provide a link for these for you so that you have them, because I know sometimes when you are in a situation like this, anything extra that you have to do can seem very overwhelming. So I will provide that for you so you have that information. And the third thing here is lack of support and understanding. So if your partner is not there for you when you need them or doesn't take your feelings into consideration, it's something I would take a step back and reflect on. Have you noticed that when you come to your partner for support or understanding, they somehow make it about themselves? This is a very common occurrence in toxic dynamics. And it's important that you talk to them about your needs and you let them know that their support and their understanding is very important in order for you to feel valued and loved in a relationship. And if your partner is unwilling or unable to meet your needs or to hear you out or understand you or make time to try to fix the relationship and find common ground, it may be possible that the relationship is nearing its end, or that you should kind of take a step back and reconsider some of your options. I want to acknowledge something, right? So I want to acknowledge that these things I have mentioned are easier said than done. I get it. But when you identify the issues and take active steps towards prioritizing your well being, you will realize how capable you truly are. So that is just identifying, right? Toxicity within your relationship. And there are many facets to the dynamics of a toxic relationship. So I don't want to just say, oh, these are the only three that you should be on the lookout for. But these are the three most common ones that I have seen. And then you're also getting into more complex layers, right? So you're talking about whether you're dealing with a narcissist or not, an actual diagnosed narcissist, not somebody that you think is a narcissist because it's a term that you've heard and it's become a buzzword and you just kind of flippantly use it because it makes sense for your situation, right? Actually dealing with somebody who's a narcissist, because if you are in a relationship with somebody who is an actual diagnosed narcissist, that is incredibly difficult. And I empathize with you because I know how hard that can be for a lot of people. And usually I recommend getting out of that relationship because there's going to be no winning in that relationship whatsoever. So now the question becomes, okay, I've identified that I'm in a toxic relationship, right? How the fuck do I get out of it? What do I do? How do I navigate or manage this? And maybe you're in a situation or a position where you've considered getting out, but you just don't know where to start. The first thing to do is to assess the threat, right? Do you feel physically safe in your relationship? And your answer to this question will dictate how you extract yourself from that situation. So if you feel physically safe, then the following recommendations will be useful for you, right? But if you do not feel safe, I would highly recommend taking the situation very seriously and contacting potentially your local authorities or having a trusted individual in your life who can help you out of that situation immediately. The other part of this is be honest and direct, right? So if you actually do feel physically safe within your relationship, that's where you would take it to this step, which is being honest and direct. And it's important to be honest with your partner about why you want to end the relationship. Be direct and be clear about your feelings and why you think the relationship is not working. The next thing here is setting boundaries, right? So if your partner is not going to respect your boundaries, it's important to set clear boundaries and stick to them. Let your partner know what behavior is not acceptable and what the consequences will be if they don't respect your boundaries. So an example of that would be, and this is a super intense example, but we're talking about toxic relationships, is a restraining order. If that's what it comes to. Building a support network. This is going to be huge. Ending a toxic relationship can be super emotionally challenging, and it's important to have support from friends and family, therapist, coach, whatever it is that you need. Reach out to people who can provide emotional support and help you through this process so that you do not feel like you are alone. And in that process, it's important that you start to prioritize some self-care, right? So self-care is another main thing to take into consideration here or to apply to your life when you are getting out of a toxic relationship. It's important to prioritize yourself. Make time for self-care activities like exercising and meditating or spending time with friends, because it's crucial in the rebuilding process and rebuilding your self-confidence. And there will be moments that you doubt yourself, that you doubt the decisions that you made, and you even consider going back. And in those moments, remind yourself of what you endured and the amount of time and energy you have invested into getting out of that situation and to the point that you are at now, which is a much stronger place, a place where you actually start to get to know yourself all over again and fall in love with yourself all over again. That's what it's all about, and this is why I work with the queer community and the LGBTQIA plus community. And look, understand something. This isn't isolated to just the queer community, right? This also happens with our heteronormative counterparts. But self-esteem and insecurities is a huge part of growing up queer and learning how to navigate the queer community and the world that is the LGBTQIA plus community as an adult, trying to manage those insecurities and trying to unpack those insecurities and trying to embrace your individuality and who you are and feel accepted by those around us. And the problem usually is that we struggle to accept ourselves first. And because we struggle to accept ourselves, why would we ever believe that anybody else is going to accept us? So what do we end up doing? We seek that intense validation externally from people outside of ourselves. And that's how a lot of people get into toxic and codependent relationships, because we are seeking that fulfillment. We're seeking that understanding and that acceptance and that love from people that can't give it to us. It's possible that they can help us along the way and they can support us and they can give as much of themselves to us as possible. But if you are taking and taking and taking, at some point, that person's going to have nothing left to give. And the dynamic of that relationship is going to fall apart. It's going to become toxic. And you're going to wonder how the hell you even got to that place. Again, let me be clear. I'm not victim blaming. And I'm not saying that you are completely to blame for this. I'm generally speaking here, right? But it's something to take into consideration. Accountability is a huge part of this, but we can't deny the fact that there's another person involved in this as well. And if they haven't done their work and they haven't done their shadow work or given themselves enough time and space to really heal and process their own emotional and mental wounds, it is likely that, I don't even want to say likely, it is inevitable that the relationship will not be a healthy one. So keep that in mind. If you feel lost, if you don't really know what to do still, if these recommendations help, but you need a little bit more assistance, reach out to me. I have my contact information everywhere. I will put my contact information in the bio to the podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I have my social media. I have a website. All resources are available to you. And that's why I do this, to help people, to help you, individuals who find themselves in these very difficult situations and just want to be happy, just want to have a healthy way of living and navigating and thinking and being. I hope you found this episode helpful. I hope you found it educational, inspirational. I hope if you are in a toxic relationship, it helps you to get out of it or to try and fix the relationship. Either way, I hope that you feel like this is a good resource and support for you. I will see you in the next episode.